so beautiful. Before we begin today, I would love to gently say this. This episode touches on fear, caregiving, responsibility, money stress, and some old family roles that shaped my identity. There's nothing graphic in it and nothing overwhelming, yet, if you feel tender at any point listening to the episode, then I would just invite you to always please honor that. Pausing is actually a form of self care. That's what you really need. So, as we get started, let's take a deep breath together. That always feels so good. Sometimes I think I'm forgetting to breathe throughout the day. So, in the last two episodes, I've been sharing about my 2025. And I know many of us have had a difficult run in 2025. Some maybe we could have anticipated. And if you're like me, perhaps a lot that you really didn't see coming. And for me, 2025 was a year that stripped more than it shined. And we've talked about grief and control and vulnerability so far in this series, and how, even with the skills as a coach, for me, life has this way of, at times, when things get overwhelming, pulling me back into old patterns in the blink of an eye before I ever even see it coming. I also shared how I once was able to reach for the skills in the darkness. As I was able to finally figure out how to do that, the dust would settle enough that I would realize that I was acting outside my own vision for how I wanted to show up, that the skills showed up lovingly once again, over and over, and saved me. And I also love to share that within weeks of my mother in law's passing, which was what episode two was about, I believed that I was well on my way to getting back on track. I had reached for the skills again. I'd cleaned up my side of the street. I was using vulnerability. And there was a day when my husband, he came up behind me while I was cleaning. And you can imagine that I was sweaty and felt yucky and was definitely in old clothes. And I was definitely not feeling like I was in a pretty moment. Let's put it that way. And yet he wrapped his arms around me, around my waist. And I was a bit surprised, but pleasantly, even though I had to resist the urge in my brain to say, oh, but the automatic thought, do I smell nice? I'm sweaty, I'm icky. But he wrapped his arms around my waist and he moved my hair out of the way. And he nuzzled my neck for just a few moments. And he stayed there just for a couple of moments. And I put my hand on his on my waist, and he just told me in my ear, thank you for being you. And he kissed me on the cheek and he walked away. And that one tender, fleeting moment felt so loving and so connected. And I felt a sigh of relief. I felt myself take a deep breath. And in addition to that, I was watching my boys once I finally allowed my grief to be seen, how they were processing now. They were sharing their own grief. They were connecting with each other and my husband and I, even in the grief, in ways that felt self-honoring and loving. And I remember in those moments, just a few weeks after feeling like I was brought to my knees, feeling so much hope, so much ease, so much relief, having a belief that we were moving through this very difficult healing process. And I was just holding on to my self-fulfilling prophecy that we're all safe and everything is going to be okay. And I was starting to believe it. And then about 3 weeks later, after that moment where my husband nuzzled my neck, it felt like the rug was ripped right out from under me yet once again. When my mom, who was already not in great health, she became very sick, and she was hospitalized just 2 days before a much desired and needed family vacation that we were about to take. And I had been counting the days until that vacation. I was so eager to receive it. We were all exhausted and from the earlier months of the year, and it felt like it was going to be a breath of fresh air and to catch that final little bit to really start again, to reset. And in that moment of her needing to go to the hospital, all of the things that happened, her safety alarm going off, calling the ambulance, meeting it at her house, following the ambulance to the hospital, watching them try to get her breathing under control in the ER, feeling anxious about her condition, I was immediately, instantaneously transported all the way back into who I realized I learned to be very early in life. Right back there to that familiar fear and responsibility and a role of being the one that fixed everything once again. And there's something important that I'd love to invite you to understand and to share about myself for this story to make sense. I'm an only child. My dad passed away when I was 18, and my mom was, in my perception, very unfamiliar with the ways of the world. She was a stay-at-home mom, and I was blessed to have a parent at home, as many didn't. Yet outside the household tasks of cooking, cleaning, most things had been taken care of for her by my father. She didn't drive, she didn't pay the bills, and the decisions in our home while I was growing up were primarily made by my dad. He was the one that took care of things. And when he was no longer there, in most ways, I became the responsible one. I took his role. My mom and my roles reversed immediately. And by taking on my dad's role, I, at the age of 18, became the one who worried, the one who was responsible, the one who fixed things, the one she went to, the one who answered questions, the one who paid her bills, the one who managed her medical needs, the one who shopped for her, the one who did her budget, and even the one who answered questions like, did I win the sweepstakes? When junk mail would arrive at her house, the kind that tells you that you did, but it's really just trying to get you to sign up for something. And she would really believe that she had won the sweepstakes or any number of things like that that occurred over the years. I was simply the one that was responsible for figuring things out and taking care of things. I was the pseudo mom at the age of 18 to my then 46-year-old mom. And for the next 35 years, I carried that role of caretaker like a badge of honor. I carried it as part of my identity. I carried it emotionally, practically, and for the most part, financially. While it often came with overwhelm and sometimes some resentment, I tried my best to be grateful for that because I knew I still had her here. And having lost my dad at such an early age, I clearly knew that having her here was never a guarantee. And it was a blessing to be able to do that. And over the years, my mom had been sick many times, especially the last 5 years or so. There were several hospitalizations, a lot of scary moments, some falls, some health crises that were definitely serious, but they were all fixable. They were all survivable. I always got through. I always figured it out. I always made sure that we had the right care, and she didn't just make it through. She healed. She was taken care of. It would happen. I would fix it. I would find the medical care, deal with the medical care team, make sure she took her medicine, whatever that was, watch very carefully with guarded eyes to make sure that I was looking for signs that she wasn't taking her medicine right, because she had a habit of doing that. I made sure she did her therapy. I was her confidant. I calmed her anxiety. And I ensured that she had a safe place to live independently because that was really important to her. It was a fear that I can remember all going through growing up in life, that she wanted me to promise that she would never live in a long-term care facility. She wanted to live by herself. So I always did my best to make sure that she could do that in a safe way. And that meant a lot of precautions and a lot of measures being taken, especially toward the end. I would make sure that she had the food that she liked and that her finances were taken care of so that she just simply didn't have to worry about it. And every time we got through one of those scares, one of those situations that felt big, that identity of the responsible one, the caretaker, the one that needed to figure it out, it just got reinforced. And without even thinking about it, for years, my internal self fulfilling prophecies were things like, I can handle this. I just need to do it. I need to take care of it. This is on me. There's no one else. I'll figure it out. So many. And that role, it shaped me into who I am in a big way. And it's also where my control, my perfectionist, and my fixer mentality was born in many ways. And it's continued to grow over the years, even with these skills and working to relinquish control and let certain things that could safely be on her paper be on her paper, and use self, like mom fulfilling prophecies, let's put it that way, and all the different things. But this time, when my mom got sick in late March of last year, on the surface, it looked familiar. It was just another crisis to fix. Yet inside, something shifted. There was some deep knowing inside of my body that this wasn't just another crisis. This wasn't going to be something that I could just muscle through. And I didn't know what that looked like. And I tried to push it out of my mind, but there was just some part of me that just knew it. And that knowing brought terror, not just fear, terror. Not quite panic yet, but this deep, quiet, dreadful knowing. Because when you've always been the responsible one, taken on the identity of the fixer, realizing that you can't do something alone, that you might just not be able to fix it, it can feel unbearable. It's terrifying. And that resistance and control that brought up in me, because all control comes from fear, it just soared. It took over. And I became somewhat obsessed. All I could think of was, I have to figure out how to fix this, how to get it under control. She has to be safe, because if she isn't, if I can't figure this out, I've failed. I didn't just fail her, I failed my dad, because when he left, I was the one here that was left to take care of her. And failure didn't seem like an option. It felt like death. And this fix it mentality was such a big part of my identity that there wasn't a question that this just had to be done. But despite staying up, not sleeping, racking my brain, making phone calls, talking to doctors, looking for care teams that could do it, I just couldn't seem to figure out how to fix this one. And with that, very quickly, my nervous system went into overdrive. And then the panic started. My thoughts were racing. They wouldn't stop. I went from sleeping very little to barely sleeping at all. My mind just obsessed over all the things, all the questions, trying to solve it. What kind of care does she need? What's that going to look like? How long will it last? Can I trust them? How much is it going to cost? How am I going to afford that? How do I make all of this work? It was important for her to live on her own, as I mentioned, and it was a promise that she had me make over and over again growing up. And I wanted to honor that promise. And she lived on a fixed income. I was already supporting her a great deal. And this was now, with more care needed, most certainly going to increase the need for that, which brought up more money wounds, right? So now with this additional care needed, more uncertainty, more decisions that I just couldn't seem to wrap my brain around and figure out before another challenge or another decision would come my way, it all started to just feel enormous. The financial responsibility, in addition to the support needs, it was breaking me. And this wasn't just stress or anxiety, or fear, or worry. It touched on trauma. It touched on old money wounds. It touched on perfectionism wounds, fear of failure, old fears of not being enough, old loneliness that I was the only one that could do it, the stories that came with that. It was old panic. And underneath it all was this familiar belief that this was all my responsibility. There was no one else. It was all mine. And here's where I would love to slow down because this matters. I'm a coach. I help people through crises every day. I knew what I needed to do. I knew I needed to release control over what wasn't mine and just simply let doing my best be good enough. But I just couldn't feel like that was okay. It didn't feel appropriate. It didn't feel doable. I knew I needed to stay soft instead of putting up my armor and shutting everybody else out and taking on all this responsibility on my own. When I knew I was surrounded by people that if I would just reach out, they would likely help me. I knew I needed to ask for help from my one and only wonderful, amazing husband, who had helped me in many ways take care of her for the better part of 30 years, be it from fixing things in her home to, you know, taking things to her when I couldn't, asking me what he could do when I would feel overwhelmed. He was always there for me, yet I couldn't bring myself to ask for help. I knew I needed to double down on as much self-care as possible and focus on filling my own cup up, even if that was tiny bits throughout the day, to have even a remote chance of having enough reserves left to get through this, to be able to take care of her, to show up with any kind of dignity or integrity in any way, shape, or form. I knew all of these things. I teach these skills. And still, for a while, I refused. I couldn't access them. Part of my brain would say, you need to do this, Michelle. And the other part was, well, it's just going to have to wait because I need to take care of this first. When I knew those things needed to come so the rest of it could get figured out. And for me, trauma mixed with unhealthy identity patterns that go way back doesn't care what I know. It starts to pull from what's been practiced, what's remembered in my body, what feels real in my brain, and what's stored in my body from past experiences are very, very different oftentimes than what I know to do. And what was practiced for me that was coming back up in this trauma was fix it, figure it out, carry it. Don't be a burden to anyone else. This is your responsibility. It was a long-standing story that I was all alone and completely and utterly all alone. And that was probably the worst part. So I went into survival mode. And survival mode always feels urgent, rigid, lonely. It feels like terror. And at some point, slowly and perfectly, I finally began to remember. And it didn't happen all at once. It was definitely not graceful, but it was enough to get me started, one step at a time. And I started to remember that control was not love, that responsibility was not the same as devotion, and that carrying everything alone was really not powerful or strength. And as I started to really let those things come back to my memory and sink in, I could see more. I could see more of what was accessible around me. I could see that my husband, he was asking me how I could help. He was standing there watching me, observing, waiting for me to let him help me, and I just wouldn't let him. I could see that my stories, old stories from the past, that weren't really accurate anymore, had me stuck in this guarded posture, and they were keeping me from opening myself and giving myself permission to receive. I could see very, very clearly that my self-worth was tied to being the person who figures this out, so that I wouldn't be a burden on anyone else, and that if I had to ask for help, it felt like failure, and that if I failed, it was the end of the world. It wasn't an option. And then I made a conscious choice as all of that finally started to sink in. And this wasn't all at once, it was over the course of weeks. And my conscious choice was to do my very best, to do my best to soften, to do my best to stay in my heart, to ask for help, to receive help that was already being offered, to use my self-fulfilling prophecies to calm my nervous system and give it reassurance that we weren't in that old time, so that I could finally make decisions clearly and from a place that felt loving and respectful and honoring of myself and everyone else. I knew I needed to prioritize. I knew I needed to be present, and I knew I needed to give myself permission to realize that trying to get this perfect was just creating more overwhelm. That perfectionism wasn't the goal. That was a big I can't. I've learned that time and again, and how many lessons is it going to take for me to understand that I am never going to be perfect no matter how hard I try, and that's okay. Because the cost of perfectionism was just too great. And I needed to care for myself on purpose, not as an afterthought, to make it a priority. And that conscious decision to make those choices started to change everything. When I stopped disappearing into responsibility, into my own stories, my own fears, my own perfectionism, and the strong urge to do it all and then just beat myself up when I couldn't because the task was clearly impossible. Then after I intentionally started giving myself loving permission to let things fade as much as possible, to relinquish control, that's when support, the help that I needed, the help that I wouldn't ask for, started showing up. My husband, my steady, devoted partner, he fully stepped in. Not because he hadn't wanted to help before, but because I was finally allowing him in. He started demanding, not asking, that I take a break. He helped me find some financial support for the situation. He even completed the paperwork for it for me. And just like in the bad old days, I realized I had just went internal, quiet, leaned on being overly capable. I had created this fog. I was telling myself I was alone when he was right there. Yet once I allowed that fog to lift, he was my hero once again. And my boys, my sons, they stepped up, each in their own way, with care and presence and love, running errands, checking on her, taking her food, helping take her to doctor's appointments, and beautifully asking me, "Mom, are you doing okay? Is there anything else I can do?" and telling me that I needed to take care of myself. What a switch is that? It seems that everybody in my family has caught on to the benefit of self-care, and I'm the one that can forget it sometimes. And then something truly extraordinary happened. I made a vulnerable request for help. I got down on my knees and I admitted that I was overwhelmed. I sent my prayers of relief, asking for the help and care out to the universe. And then two angels here on earth appeared in the form of my mom's neighbors. And they helped me care for her. They showed up with kindness, with dignity, with heart, with love. And those weeks that followed that, they were always there. They were always checking on her, communicating with me to see what we needed, and never asking for anything in return. And because of my permission and my remembrance to receive support from all of these amazing humans in my life, my husband, my boys, her medical care team, her home care team, and these amazing, wonderful neighbors who stepped in from love in their hearts and no other reason, my mom was cared for and surrounded by familiar faces, by love, by care, by humanity. And I finally didn't have to carry it alone. And that still brings tears to my eyes, that I was the one that was blocking them. And that's what these skills look like in real life. Not perfection, not immunity from problems, and not immune from the ability to reach for them, but forgetting sometimes and then remembering, because they're always there once we know them. And returning to the basics of self-care, of vulnerability, of relinquishing control, of receiving, and gratitude. Lots and lots of gratitude. And letting go of what was never mine to carry alone. And staying soft when fear wanted to make me rigid like in the past. And allowing love to meet me right where I was in all the messiness of life. So if you've ever been the responsible one your whole life or just for a season, or maybe even right now, if control once kept you safe, but now you're seeing that it might just be exactly what's keeping you isolated, if you're standing at the edge of hoping and praying for the courage to let go, yet not quite there yet, I would love to invite you to consider this. What if? What if you don't have to carry this alone? And you never really did. So if this resonates, you're welcome to share a role that you've carried for far too long that you desire to relinquish control of, a moment you allowed yourself to receive help, how when you were finally vulnerable, help that you couldn't have ever imagined suddenly arrived, or how you've seen your own identity might just be tied to something that may not be serving you anymore, and what you want to shift that identity or that self-fulfilling prophecy to. Perhaps it's something like my shift from I have to be the responsible one to I am allowed to receive help. Or maybe it would simply be sharing a desire of I'm learning to receive, or I want to learn to receive. This isn't about blame or shame or criticism or fixing or advice. Just the beauty in the truth and being seen and the desires in your heart. And in our next episode, I'll share what happened next when everything collided yet once again. The day I lost my contractor job when they eliminated the department that was providing some much needed extra income to help pay for my mom's care. And that same day, that I followed my mom's ambulance to the hospital yet once again. and how shame sent me further into a trauma loop that I didn't even recognize I was in for so long. How the skills once again felt impossible to reach for just when I felt like I'd finally found them again. And even scarier, how I didn't even know if I wanted to hold on to them. I was truly on the fence. It all just felt like too much, too overwhelming. And I'd love to share my takeaway from this part of my experience that I've shared today. My takeaway is sometimes healing isn't about doing more. It's about finally allowing love in, receiving, taking time for moments, brief and fleeting if need be, for self-care when I can sneak them in for myself to be able to just keep going, to simply stay afloat sometimes. Sometimes responsibility isn't about control, it's about vulnerability, is another takeaway I have. Vulnerability in expressing desires and sharing my need for help and saying, I don't know how to do this and I'm scared. It's about allowing myself to accept and admit, and I can't, when something feels like it's too overwhelming or too much, even if that feels impossible or uncomfortable, because I can see clearly if I don't use my I can't in that moment, that the cost of not allowing it is even greater. And also vulnerability and focusing on releasing my own expectations of perfectionism about what help looks like, about what success looks like, and being able to be present and receive all of the help that comes my way with such a heart filled with so much gratitude. So I'd love to thank you for being here with me. We are walking this together. So if no one's told you today, I would love to share. I believe you are enough. You are amazing. You are courageous for experimenting with and doing this work. You don't need to be perfect to be successful. Perfection isn't required as much as presence and accountability in my experience. And I would love to provide some hope and invite you to align with me in shouting from the rooftops that 2026 is our year. I would love to invite you to claim that with me. Connect with your sisters in our community, comment on this video, be seen, and receive the love that pours in back to you. You are worthy, and I am standing for all the amazing desires in your vision. And we're not going to stop until you receive them, till we all receive them. It's our birthright. So until next time, I would invite you to be really, really loving and gentle with yourself. And just check in and make sure you're pointing your magic wand towards focusing it on what you want to be manifesting more of. Point it towards the things you want, not the things that you don't want. And my guess is there's some greatness already there. I know for me, when I finally looked for it, it was right there. So I'm sending you all my love. Thank you for being here. I'm so grateful for you. Coach Michelle.